So I guess I should say at first what I mean by barely survived. So the challenge that I found was that I'm sure everyone else found was that it was really tough. I felt like I was having I felt like I was having an easy pandemic, but it was actually really tough. And so I ended up having to seek a reduction in duties for this winter semester to just recover from that. So I want to put that out there because it is possible to do that if you're lucky. And it's something that I think we need to hold our universities to account for because many of us really put it all out on the line in the fall and really suffered for it afterwards. But I did make it through. And so a few tips about what I did. So first, I just want to note that the research or the course development that I'm describing here took place on the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and the island of Newfoundland is the ancestral and current homeland of the Mi'kmaq. And what are we really saying? And by we, I mean settlers. I know I'm speaking to a mixed audience. Some of us are settlers, some of us are Indigenous. But for me as a settler, what does it mean when I say that I'm on someone else's homeland? First, I guess for me, I'm not a guest on this land. Some of our land acknowledgements imply that we're guests, and I'm not. I just showed up. No one invited me. No one gave me permission. I thought, oh, I'd like to move to Canada, and I immigrated. So I'm not a guest. And also just to point out that treaty land is not ceded land. So the island of Newfoundland is not, there haven't been any treaties signed yet. So there are no treaties here. It is unceded land, but treaty land is also unceded land. So people elsewhere who say, Treaty 7 or Treaty 6, that doesn't mean that the land was ceded under treaty. So just a couple things up front. So this intro Chem class that I did in the fall was entirely remote, but it was not an online course. And this is something that was made very clear by our administration because they couldn't give us the support to actually develop online courses. So we were just kind of putting stuff together. The students were all around the world, all different time zones. Most were new to post-secondary education, so fresh out of high school. They had a really wide range of living conditions. So some of my students had their own bedroom, some had their own apartment, others were living in a crowded space with other students. Others were in households with small children, their own or siblings or other relatives. And something that really impacted us, particularly here in Newfoundland, was different levels of internet access. So a lot of students, maybe not a lot, a significant number of students were in the parking lot of a Tim's to pick up the Wi-Fi there because there are parts of the island where we don't have good cell connection. Where there isn't good internet connection. So this is the kind of scenario I was working in with students who couldn't always access the material, who couldn't do stuff synchronously, and yet they wanted to learn and they really needed access to the course. So my goals really were just to keep the students from panicking or dropping out and to give them a positive experience of chemistry. The outcome for my course is that it's a prerequisite for entry into a number of different programs, but there isn't anything realistically, like if I really face reality, there isn't anything in my course that they actually need to know for the future. They can pick it up later when they need to. If they don't remember any chemistry content from the course, any specific facts, I have to admit that it's not the end of the world. So what I wanted was to keep them in this path that they're on, if it's right for them, despite the really, really difficult conditions. And the guidance that we were given was to provide low stakes assignments. And I think we've heard about that from a lot of people. So what I had was 7 units with each one had short readings and questions based on OpenStax. So I've tailored it to my course. I talked about that, I think, at C3 a couple of years ago. A math learning guide. It's essentially using our LMS quiz tool, but calling it a learning guide instead of a quiz tool, a quiz kind of, I don't know, change of focus for the students, and learning guides for the topics, again, through D2L quizzes. And those I've always done, right? They can take them as many times as they want, algorithmic questions. What I had added new for this year was grade scope assignments and alternate assessments. So the grade scope assignments were, I can talk more about Gradescope if people are interested, but basically it's an online platform that was integrated with our LMS, but it's a separate company. And it allows students to photograph and submit things that are handwritten, and it has different ways to recognize objects and sort them to make grading a little bit easier. And it has built-in assessment tools as well. And then the alternate assessments were a whole range of things that students could do for points. So, and many of them I learned about actually at previous C3. So they could do a Kahoot, they could develop a crossword puzzle, they could do a mind map. I learned a lot more things that I could do from the games session earlier with the cards and so forth. So a lot of it was they were developing study tools that their classmates could use, but they had to demonstrate their knowledge in order to do so. So these last two were new items. But you can imagine if I had all of these different things and each one was worth maybe 2%, 3%, the students had to turn stuff in all the time to get their marks. And so luckily I realized before the semester started that this was not going to work. So I really simplified it. They had 7 Gradescope assignments, so there were no midterms. There were 7 Gradescope assignments, 1 for each unit. There was 1 final exam, which is a Gradescope assignment that was worth 20%, and there were labs. Any of the other things that they completed, whether it was the learning guides or the alternate assessments, would reduce the weight of the Gradescope assignments. To make it easier for the students to understand mathematically, I just called them bonus points, because to explain the different weighting for some students was just too confusing. So that really simplified things just by narrowing it down to, okay, if you just want to show up and do the minimum, this is what you have to do. And that's fine. If you want to do more, if you are excited about a particular topic, want to delve in deeper, try these alternate assessments. They'll help you learn a little bit more. They'll allow you to be a little bit more creative, etc. Now, it worked, and I think it worked well because the grades were high, but I was okay with that. And letting go of a need, and this is something I've been letting go of for the past, 20 years, the need to distinguish between different students on some kind of a fine 100-point scale. I've been letting go of that. And so I was happy for everybody to get a high grade. And I think it really reflected that understanding as opposed to how they perform on tests. I made the rubrics and expectations really transparent for the alternate assessments, because potentially I could be getting, hundreds of these alternate assessments each week. So basically saying, this is what you have to do. If you do it, you get the marks. If you don't, you don't. And so it's very easy to look at a short submission and say, yep, they did it, or no, they didn't. And something that really surprised me, the flexibility that I showed the students up front, saying, this is going to be a crazy semester. I don't know how it's going to work. Let me know what you need. If you don't get stuff in on time, just get it to me when you can, because realistically, I wasn't going to be grading stuff on any particular schedule. I knew I'd be overwhelmed. And the kindness that the students showed to me as well was amazing. Usually it's like, if you don't have something up when they expect it, they're badgering you with emails saying, why isn't this up? And sending complaint emails to other people. And, and there was none of that this semester. It was really nice. They were just very accommodating for when my stuff didn't get done on time, and I was accommodating with them. So I think that really, really helped in terms of making this feasible. So what I'll take to the future is that flexibility. It's not so difficult if I have that simple scaffold, and to really divide my expectations into, like, what's the minimum you need to do? And whatever grade you get from that is the grade you get, versus what are all the other enrichment activities that you can do for one unit that you really like, or one topic that you're really excited about, or for none of them at all. And to make that upfront, because not every student wants to delve into chemistry. I don't know why, but they don't. Also, I'm going to take with me this permission for alternate assessment. So there were very rigid ideas from a lot of people who are in charge of stuff at my university as to what we should be doing. And they're always watching you if you're doing stuff a little bit different, or if they suspect that you might do that. And now there's really that permission to explore a bit more, and you don't have to fight as much for creating different options. I do have a much better understanding of student realities than I ever did before. And also, this has just been part of a bigger process for me in moving toward ungrading. So that's sort of my cycle of letting go of the numbers, and really providing that clarity in my mind of what's the minimum and what are some other easy things for students to do.